Guitar Business Radio is the podcast for the business of guitar, where you'll always get no reviews, no demos, and no idle chatter. From players to CEOs and in between. If you have a professional or business connection to the world of guitar, this show is your window to insight and information you won't get anywhere else. I'm Jeffrey D. Brown, and I approve this message. So let's get to it. From Guitar Business Media, it's episode 34 of GBR, the show that dives deep into details, drills down for perspective, and decompresses with a little inspiration to send you on your way. And like we said, you won't get this anywhere else. So today, I'm not going to spend a lot of time setting the stage because we have a long interview with an extraordinary guitar builder that I've known for over a decade. He's been an innovator and leader in the boutique guitar builder movement internationally. So we've traveled all the way to Finland, virtually of course, to speak at length with Juha Ruokangas of Ruokangas Guitars. For those of you who may not be familiar with his work, he's been at it over 20 years, not just as a highly respected builder, but a very involved industry leader. He's one of the founders of the European Guitar Builders Organization, as well as the Holy Grail Guitar Show. And in the course of only a few years, this show has become one of the preeminent international events showcasing the work of boutique guitar builders from all over the world. He's got a lot to say, and we'll get to that in just a minute or so. Well, now it's time for our official promotional moment right here on GBR. This is the spot where we tell you something important about our organization, or even better, somebody else's. So here's a quick announcement from Guitar PR 4.0 that features a new and completely redesigned presence on the web, as well as a variety of expanded services available only to guitar-related companies and organizations. So what does the 4.0 mean anyway? Well, there have been many smaller incremental developments to the business now in its 11th year, but this is the fourth major evolutionary rollout, thus the 4.0. I mean, it's just a marketing thing, but we like it. More importantly, many of the services that we've offered in one form or another over the years behind the scenes with our clients are now part of our public platform. So while this message may not apply to you, if you're involved in a guitar-related business, organization, or professional capacity, arrange a visit to guitarpr.com to find out if our services are right for you. No appointment needed. Walk-ins are welcome, virtually of course. And while we're waiting patiently for you to show up over there, let's just proceed on to something completely different. Well, Juha Ruokangas started his company in the mid-90s, and as you'll hear, was a very early internet adopter when the web was just in its infancy. In fact, he was one of the first custom guitar builders to even have a website. I remember those times where sites were mostly text and hyperlinks and a few images. But Ruokangas Guitars has developed a reputation for innovation and high quality over many years from a small country nearly 6,000 miles from us. And yet, it's like there's no distance at all, and his work and dedication to elevating the industry he's part of into an international community is but one of his many accomplishments. But there's a lot more to talk about, so let's get to it, as Juha Ruokangas joins us from Finland, right here and right now. Well, Juha, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us all the way from Finland. So welcome to GBR.
Great to be here. I'm really honored that you asked.
Well, look, I first got to know you and your work 10 or 11 years ago or so. I was impressed at that time, but a lot has happened since then. And like I always do, I want to go back even further into the earlier years and understand what kinds of things may have influenced you growing up that have become part of the foundational elements, as we like to say, of your business and career today. So what can you tell us?
Well, in some ways, isn't it quite the usual story for luthier, to fall in love with playing the guitar and then notice that I've actually fallen in love even more with the actual instrument.
Yes, I think that's true.
Yeah. So it was like a, continuum for a guy like me who, loved to build stuff. And I always wanted to check what's under the hood. And I don't know, starting from Lego sets and model airplanes, and then eventually the guitar became the object of that obsession or devotion, if you will. And but then again, there's the other side of me. I've always loved reading and understanding, what's going on in the world. So I've read a lot about the history of humankind, philosophy, psychology, and a lot of science fiction as well. And so now in the hindsight, I think I can see that if I would have made just a little bit different choices at certain crossroads of my life, I could have as well ended up being something completely else. I don't know, an author, or I still would love to write a book, or a politician or something. Not that I feel that I've made a bad choice or anything. No, it is since the day I kind of figured out that, hey, wow, guitar making can in fact be a job, a profession. It was this quite unique feeling. There never was really any choice for me, I feel. It all just came along in a very natural way. It's almost like the guitar chose me. Yeah. And I didn't choose anything. It just went that way. When
did you really start fiddling with it? Now, did you play at all, or did you just really kind of get into?
Well, I was playing. Yeah, I played. I started playing in when I was maybe, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, something like that. Right. I started playing, and it was the rock music. It was. I had this big brother of a friend of mine had on his wall a poster of Jimmy Page, and Jimmy Page was there. It's I think it's this one of the most classical poses of Jimmy Page, legs spread wide and his hair on his face and his Les Paul hanging low, and he looks just the cool itself. He just looks awesome, and I fell in love with that rock star look, and that was my I want that. I want to be a rock star as well. So I went that way, started learning to play guitar, and had my bands and all that. And in the side of it was the kind of fiddling with guitars, like learning to repair, and for myself, then for some friends and whatnot, and eventually it just never, at that age, I was maybe, I don't know, 15, 16. It never just kind of, I never figured that this could be something I could do as a job, because this was still, this was in the 80s. It was the time before internet, and my social circles in the part of Finland where I lived, it was a small world, and it wasn't that obvious that I would kind of somehow get information about that there is actually something like that out there in the world, like something called guitar makers, luthiers, who are making their living as with making guitars. So for me, guitar at that point was something that is spilled out from factories, and still I was kind of repairing them, and it became a hobby for me. And then a bit later on, after high school, I was doing these kind of odd jobs and wasn't very interested in going to school. Even though I was kind of gifted in, when graduating from high school, my teachers were telling me that you should go, to university, read psychology, read this and that. And but I just wasn't interested in it. And then at some point I was unemployed, and I walked in Finland, in Helsinki, to an unemployment office, like we have, like a public
yeah, we have those. We have those.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Good. So I don't know how it works in other parts of the world, but anyways, I walked into one of these places, and there was this very friendly woman who sat me down and asked me questions about, what do you want to do, and what are your interests, that maybe you should consider some education. You're a young guy, and just looking for these kind of easy way out, and these jobs that I was looking at, but not so much schools. And so she was very helpful. She was asking me about my interests, and when she heard that I have an interest towards guitars, she told me that there is, in fact, in Finland, something that you probably don't have in the United States, is that there is a school in Finland, publicly funded guitar making school.
Yeah, I haven't seen that here. Obviously, we have a lot of small schools, and then I know that companies like organizations like Musicians Institute. I've interviewed, in fact, one of the early interviews I did was from Michael Pfeiffer down in their Nashville office. And I thought that was, obviously that's not even inexpensive, let alone public, but but you're right. And I don't know unless there's something in public schools here, but I'm not aware of it. So continue.
So it is very rare, at least. I mean, in Europe as well, it would be quite rare to find arts and crafts institution that has guitar making as one of their courses to be specialized in, and public school, and very, very inexpensive here in Finland. So when I heard about this opportunity that there even exists such a school, let alone the fact that there you could become a guitar maker, that was really for me a moment like
a big moment.
Yeah, a big moment. That was the moment, it really I got the chills down my spine that, I have to go there. I have to get into that school.
And did you?
Yeah, I did.
I was assuming you were going to say that, but
I did. I was fortunate, and it was a great school, and it got me it pushed me onto this path, which is fantastic.
And how long a period of time did you spend there?
3 years at this school.
Wow, that's a pretty good stint.
3 years, and during that time I built, if I remember correctly, 12 instruments. First, a couple of Finnish old kind of simple folk instruments, and then moved on to, I made a Telecaster, I made a Stratocaster, I made replicas like that, and a Les Paul. I made a Rickenbacker 4001 bass replica, a classical guitar, and a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, wow, it's a good variation.
Yeah, so that really got me started. And I remember that I guess I was already in that school in some ways the different kid among those kind of artisan-minded guitar maker students, because, well, it's one of these stereotypes about the Finnish character, that we're quiet and we're kind of rather more introvert than extrovert people, and not so easily sociable or kind of outgoing. And often for a Finnish craftsman or artist or whatnot, it's often the case, not always, but it is often true that it is kind of difficult for us to somehow be proud of our work and tell about that to the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. So we're most kind of more kind of humble kind of people. Somebody comes ask me or ask a Finnish craftsman, maybe the stereotype, typical kind of craftsman, that what is so great about your guitar, and he stares at the floor and can't think of anything to say, really. Because it's somehow embarrassing for a typical Finnish person to start praising your own persona or your work or whatever. But I've never had really a problem with that. So I was more extrovert. I was more outgoing. And I remember that I think we were having a few beers with friends in the school, not in the school, after school, in the evening, weekend, most likely. And we were talking about the future, whatever. And I remember I was fantasizing to these guys, these friends of mine, about how I'm going to aim high, and I'm going to make it international. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to be at the top. And the other guys were kind of, staring at each other and laughing, and probably, behind my back, they were like, that guy is crazy. But anyways, so from those days on, I've had this kind of vision to really get far in what I'm doing with this.
So you're motivated, and I guess we might say a bit ambitious, and
mildly put.
Mildly.
I'm ambitious to the level where in some parts of my life I've also, now in the hindsight of it, I feel I've kind of lost the kind of let's say the perspective to the actual important priorities in my life, and put my work and my ambition for guitars above everything else.
Well, I think that's probably somewhat common. I I don't think there's anything unusual about that.
No, I guess not. And yeah, it has kind of led into certain scenarios in my private life that then I can see now that, okay, yeah, I've made this choice, and at some points in my life, the people around me have suffered because of that. But luckily, it's all, that's we're human beings, and we're struggling along the best way we can. That's what we do. I mean, we do, even the worst of us, we do the best we can.
So how did you, once you got out of school, how did you get into the business? What was the entry point?
The entry point was 1995 when I graduated, and I started my one-man show called Ruokangas Guitars.
And just so we understand, that's what you've been doing ever since, right?
Yeah. So since 1995, and
so what was it like getting started? How did you get your first traction, as we might say? What was there a turning point? Was there a milestone of some kind that where you first realized that, okay, I finally have got some legs here and we're starting to move? Was there a point there that you recognized that?
Well, there could be a couple of things that pop up first in my mind. First of all, because I started out as in those days, at least in Finland, and as I've gotten to know a lot of my colleagues around the world later on, I've figured that this is the usual story, that you would start repairing guitars locally to make your living, and maybe then those of us who want to be established as guitar makers then would start making, either in those days, either replicas of the well-known brands guitars, or designing our own guitars and whatnot. So for me it was similar. So I started repairing in the local scene guitars for players, and at the same time, like I mentioned, I was really from the start aiming high with my goals, and so all along I was there designing my first original guitar model that I then got ready in 1997. And when I got that guitar model ready, it was called the Duke, and I'm still making those guitars. Now I've made
that's amazing.
Maybe 300 pieces of those by now. And so anyways, I got the first guitar ready, and I was, at that point, I had figured a few kind of differentiating points in that guitar. Well, the design being one thing, but I started using certain materials that were not so common in electric guitars at the time. I replaced mahogany with a tone wood called a Spanish cedar, and I used, instead of maple tops, I used birch tops from Finland. So this was something that I just thought that, okay, I'm gonna do these other materials. I'm gonna try them. And then when I got that first satisfying piece of the Duke model ready, and I was playing it, I was kind of feeling that, oh, this is a great guitar. I feel that this is a great guitar, but I kind of, realized that I'm just a young kid. I mean, I don't know if it's good for real. That I need some perspective to this. And so I figured, who could be someone I look up to, and who could give me some kind of confirmation about this guitar, that that it's really as good as I'm kind of thinking it is. And then there's a Finnish guitarist. His name is Jukka Tolonen. He's big in Europe, or he was big in Europe in the really big fusion jazz guitarist in the 70s, and he was still very actively playing at the time in the 90s. And so I thought that, okay, I will call up this guy, and he lived at the time in Stockholm in Sweden, a Finnish guy, but he had moved to Sweden. And so I tried to reach him so I could show him the guitar. And well, other guys had probably tried to approach him as well. He wasn't very interested in my guitar, but eventually he answered the call, because maybe he realized that I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to give up. So yeah. So I left voicemails, and I was really pain in the ass probably. And eventually I tricked him into that I was making a trip to Stockholm, and on that trip I would have a chance to show him a guitar, no strings attached, figuratively speaking.
That's a little punish.
Yeah, figuratively speaking. You know, I'm not trying to sell the guitar, but I would like just an honest opinion about it. And well, I wasn't traveling to Stockholm, but I thought that, you know, I would lower the threshold for him, that I would tell him I'm coming there anyway. So, you know, why not? So
you made the trip. You made a trip.
I made the trip when after he told me, okay, fine, whatever, you know, come show the guitar. And this guy is, I mean, in this part of the world, this guy is a legend. He's really one of these guys, like, you know, in this part of the world, one of the greatest guitarists of that era. And I was a big fan of his playing. And so anyways, I go to Stockholm, I show him the guitar, and he starts asking me questions. He just keeps on playing the guitar. He's this pretty quiet guy and doesn't talk too much, and he just plays the guitar. And then at some point he tells me that, okay, let's go to our rehearsal room. You know, I would try it with an amp and with this other amp, and we go to that other place. And then he wants to go to some music store with the guitar to play it with yet another amp. And then I'm kind of starting to think that, oh, this guy maybe likes the guitar. And then eventually he tells me that his wife is working in the Swedish television, which is nearby. That could we stop by there to show her the guitar?
Boy, this is really getting involved, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'm thinking that, okay, yeah, sure. Why not? Let's go. And so we stopped by at the Svenska Televisionen, Swedish television, and to show the guitar to Lisa, Jukka's wife, and they go. I'm there a little bit away from them, and they talk something, and then Jukka comes to me and just offers his hand to me and says that, oh, this guitar is so great, I just have to buy it. I was not planning to, but I just have to buy it. And then this was the first kind of it was. I was really, up until that moment, I was the guy fixing guitars for the local guys. And then the next day, in theory at least, I was the guy who had sold the guitar to Jukka Tolonen, who was one of the most legendary names in Scandinavia, in Europe, of the fusion jazz rock from the 70s.
Wow.
So
wow.
Yeah, so this was the first kind of pin, you know, in my
and a big one too. And how did that manifest? Were you able to take advantage of that in some way?
Yeah, that's the next part of the story, which is even more elemental to what happened then the following years and following decades. Is that now we're living in 1997, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And
internet.
Yeah, and this is something that I had a friend. When I started my company in 1995, I had this friend from high school who, you know, while I had educated myself to be a guitar maker, he had educated himself with computers and programming computers. And he was telling me that, you know, in 1995 that you need to have a website. And 1995. You remember how it was then? There was
I was there. I was absolutely involved in it. Yeah.
Yeah, and Alta Vista. There was the Netscape.
That's right.
And there was these directories.
And, Lycos and God knows.
Yeah. And this was it was the early time where you couldn't do too much on internet. I mean, you had some information there, but most companies in the guitar business were not. I mean, companies didn't really. They didn't have websites at the time. It was really early on, and it was just like on that kind of crossroads where it started to kind of surface that it was starting to become something a little bit more than just for the nerds. And so my friend anyways convinced me that you need to go to internet, you need to make a website. So I wasn't the first luthier in the world, but I was among the very first luthiers in the world who had a website. So I made this kind of primitive website that I launched in 1996, and I sent press releases to guitar magazines, Guitar Player, Guitar World, and European magazines in the UK, Germany, France, and I think I sent something to Japan as well. And and this was the time when digital cameras were absolutely crap. You couldn't take a decent photo with a digital camera, so you needed to take the the photos with the real camera with a film in it, and and sending a press release was not an email. It was magazines didn't have email addresses at the time.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So I made up these simple press releases. I'm a guitar maker here in Finland, blah blah blah. I make this guitar. These guitars, the Duke, it was in 1996 when we put out the website, and I really didn't even have the Duke yet ready, but I made the press release that I'm making the Duke anyway, and blah blah, and in the end I put that www.ruokangas.com, and the next thing I noticed a few months later, most of these magazines had put out my press release, and some of them had put it out big with a photo of a guitar that I had sent them. And a prototype that wasn't really operational, but prototype anyways. And but that was not the gist of the story they had made. They had made the story out that, look, there's a guy in Finland, this luthier in Finland, who has a website. And this was the story.
Wow.
And wow. That's why I got really like a lot of exposure at that very early time to my website. So I made my first international sales, then and this comes back now to Jukka Tolonen and this guy, because the moment he bought that guitar and I went to see him on the first gig that I had a chance to go, and I took a photo of him on stage with that guitar and I put it on the front page that Jukka Tolonen plays Ruokangas guitars. And so this was what I did. Then in 1997, 1998, I started getting slowly but surely my first international orders. And typically it would be something in the kind of whereabouts of that guitar that I had made for Jukka Tolonen.
And so I mean, that must have been, so I can see where that was really a launch pad, and it just went from there. It grew from there.
Yeah. So it just, so the kind of, I would say that in those times, the stars were aligned very favorably for me in terms of how I got good exposure through internet, and good things were happening. And then a couple of years later, in the year 2000, that was the first year I exhibited at the Frankfurt Music Messe, which would be like the NAMM.
Big show,
big one. So this was a big one, and it just went on from there. And in these times, it kind of stuck to me how important the internet presence was. It just became like this natural part for me. And I guess it's also, it's quite close to my heart in some way, even though I've never been, I'm not able to program, or I'm not like a guitar, a computer nerd in that sense, but I do, I do find it fascinating, the power that it has.
Well, I think my first impression is that you really had a head start over just about everybody.
I don't know. No, I wouldn't know if it was over everybody.
Well, I'm going to say just like about a large number.
Yeah, among the first ones, I think, in that way, that it just kind of, I was in the right time, and just good things happened in that way. And I know that with the web stuff we started, we were on the kind of like riding the wave among the very first ones in 1996, 1997, 1998, whatever. And then from that on, I've invested quite a lot of time and effort and money to keep it that way, that we would be continue riding that wave,
Well, I'm going to, a little bit down the path here, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more, ask you a little bit more about your website, because it's, I remember seeing it years ago, but it's an amazing website. It reflects what you've done, what you do, what you've become. And so I want to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But the one thing and we've talked on other occasions, and the one thing that I have learned about you, Juha, is that you have a lot of historical knowledge of the boutique guitar business as it really developed, both in North America and then later on your side of the world. And I was just kind of wondering if you could give us a little sense of the differences there and how that affected the growth of your business. Is that something you can elaborate a little bit on?
Yeah. The tradition of handmade guitar here in Europe, it has quite different roots from the American tradition. I mean, it was happening here, but in a very different atmosphere. I mean, the acoustic guitar makers in America in the 60s, in the 70s, there was this kind of communal spirit that manifested itself in many ways in founding the GAL, Guild of American Luthiers, and Asia, Association of String Instrument Artisans. And it was like a continuation of the hippie movement in some ways.
That's right.
And
that's right.
and there's actually a great book about this. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's called The Guitar Makers, The Endurance of Artisanal Values in North America.
I'm probably familiar with it, as like so many things over so many years. It's probably somewhere in the archives of my mind, but
and it's not actually very old. It was written just a few years ago and published. It's the author is Catherine Dudley, and he did this like intense study and a lot of interviews about the American luthiers, and this is something I can highly recommend to you or whoever, I mean, to the listeners of the radio show, whoever are interested in this kind of niche field of history of humankind.
Sure.
That has got to do with guitar makers in America. But anyway, so I mean, so the American luthiers had that communal spirit and that kind of reflecting the hippie movement and sharing the knowledge and that sort of spirit. And whereas in Europe, it was all rooted in this old, extremely kind of protectionist, closed-in guild systems, where information was definitely not freely shared at all. So it was all, kept behind closed curtains. And it had to do with the masters. They had their secrets, and they wouldn't share it with anybody except their journeyman, who would come there and then start studying under their guidance, and then eventually earning the profession that way, and then going on his own to become a master and so on. But so, I mean, and in this way, the different atmospheres, the different spirits in the guitar making world, I think that gave the scene of the American handmade guitar a head start in the 60s and the 70s, because it was when you share information, you get information, and it all becomes, and it started blooming like crazy there. And in Europe, it all happened a bit. The boutique guitar, the handmade guitar scene, the luthier scene, it was there, but it was kind of more local and kind of secretive. And well, later on, 1980s in Europe, the scene had slowly woken up a bit, and finally, again in the wake of the internet, the whole concept of the boutique guitar started to bloom eventually worldwide. Because I mean, before this, the term boutique guitar didn't really, I mean, people were talking about handmade guitars, people were talking about luthiers, but the kind of the global boutique guitar scene as we know it now, it has evolved parallel with the development of internet. And, all of a sudden, someone like me, I mean, it was possible for a microscopic small company to operate outside your local environment so much easier. You didn't need that much kind of knowledge about, even press releases or all that you could still get the word out a little bit. And this was, again, I mean, now we're kind of we're starting to be at the other end of the curve regarding internet. I mean, during 90s, early 2000s, if you were active on internet, you could get pretty good visibility without paying money. But now we're kind of at a point where, as we know, I mean, internet with the social media and YouTube and whatnot, I mean, it's saturated to a point where, again, we're facing this same kind of dilemma. Okay, it's easier to get a word out, but because of the noise, it's nearly impossible to get heard.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. And now we're forced into spending a lot more money to.
Yeah, that's right. And it's I guess it's, I mean, there's no right and wrong. It's just something that is going on, and it's a kind of a curve. Well, and this, it's
change and evolution. I mean, no way to stop that.
Yeah. So this in the 90s again, I mean, this change in the world, it made a monumental difference for someone like me. I wasn't known internationally, and Finland wasn't exactly known internationally from its high-end guitars or anything of the sort, And all of a sudden, from here in the middle of nowhere, North Scandinavia, a tiny little country, Finland, that shares over 1,000-kilometer border with Russia, that often people living far away from Finland and maybe not knowing the geographics so very well, they misinterpret that this little blip is part of Russia. But anyways, I mean, and all of a sudden with the birth of internet, so this was possible that we could make it out there. And I don't know, I mean, me being this guy who I always like to look at things from the bird perspective, I mean, striving to understand the big picture. It's just something that I can't help. Sometimes it's a burden, but I found it very helpful throughout my career, in order to understand, where I come from and where does this business come from and where is the roots of the guitar making in Europe, where are they in America, and reflecting to the past, it helps me to sculpt my future to the way I want. I have something to say, and then I go and say it, and notice often that not everybody thinks these things at all. So I'm often called as a thinker. I'm a guy who's a thinker.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
You do think. I've noticed that you think.
Yeah. And I have to add that the understanding the magnitude of the phenomenon of handmade guitar as a whole, including the history and the kind of the different cultures and different roots that we have in different parts of the world. It's also a very humbling experience to understand that each of us, the younger generation of luthiers, we stand on the shoulders of those who were before. That's
absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Well, as a thinker and a doer, as I see you, I think it's fair to say that you've played an important role in the expansion of that boutique guitar business in the EU, including the organization that you helped form and the event that they now sponsor that has really become world famous in the guitar world. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, this is something that is very close to my heart. I mean, I mentioned I started exhibiting at the Frankfurt Music Messe 18 years ago, year 2000. And from that first show I attended to, I got this feeling that I'm in the wrong place. To me, it was an event mainly targeted to the last large manufacturers, to the wholesales, to the retail business, but not so much to the small guy. I mean, it was all so corporate-like. And there I was, a one-man show, literally standing in the shadow of these, big fishes, trying to make a hell of a noise so somebody would notice me. And I wasn't alone, of course. I mean, there were others like me there, and to whom I started slowly trying to talk about already then back in the day, suggesting that, we do something about it, start an association, cooperation, whatnot. But it took another 10 years or more that it kind of crystallized, even for me, in a sensible way. I think it was in the year 2012 or maybe 2013. I was exhibiting at the Montreal Guitar Show in Canada. Have you ever been at that show?
I haven't, but I'm certainly familiar with it.
Yeah, and so anyways, there were quite a few of European luthiers there, and there was a bunch of us. We started talking how nice that Montreal Guitar Show was, because that was like the first guitar show for many of us that had a focus to the handmade guitar and not to the mass-produced stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, the mass-produced stuff wasn't invited to Montreal Guitar Show. I mean, the big brands were not there, so it kind of it started from there. We were thinking. I remember we were a bunch of us. There was Michael Spolt and Tanja Spolt from Austria. There was Frank Daimel and his wife Cora. My wife was there as well, Emma, and a few others. Guitar makers, a couple of journalists, and we were there at the rooftop of the Hyatt Hotel where the Montreal Guitar Show took place.
Right.
We were there at a bar having a glass of wine and thinking how great it would be to have something similar in Europe as the Montreal Guitar Show.
And there wasn't anything really at the time?
No, there wasn't. There is a lot of, like in the North America, there were already then quite a few local shows, meaning like, if there was a show in Italy, it would be for Italians, or they wouldn't be international in the way that they would have everything written only in Italian language in the catalog.
So just local events like
French
we have
shows
here.
would be so it would be like that. And in Europe, it is really like it's a bigger of an issue here than it is in the North America, because we have here so many different small countries with different languages. So it's a really like a bigger thing to cross borders here. Even though at that point we had already been in the European Union for quite some years, but still I think most people were, people in Germany, they thought they were German people, even though they were European people, and so on. Finnish people thought were Finnish people, even though we're European people. I mean, okay, it's not a country, it's like a union of countries, but still it was like a factor that played a role with the languages and all that. So there were shows, but not really any significant show that would cross these borders, that would be genuinely international. And I don't think there is actually in North America either. I mean, there aren't many.
No, I mean you have lots of regional events.
Really, a lot, yeah.
In fact, about the time that you and I got to know each other, actually in that period just before that, I was attempting to do that with 3 other good friends of mine, and we formed an organization and we certainly attempted to do this show called Guitar Expo with an X. In Long Beach at the big convention center, and had all the pieces of it, but just couldn't ultimately do it after about 9 months. We had to throw in the towel on it. But so I don't know. It's really just been mostly, some good regional stuff. So nobody is really, we had that holy grail goal of trying to create a NAMM-like show for guitar, which I'm sure we were obviously not the first to try to do that. But
and there's nothing wrong with the local shows or the regional shows. It's very much needed, and a lot of these regional shows have actually, to some extent, international exhibitors. But when one talks about a genuinely international show, then it means that it's something that attracts international press, and it people travel to that show internationally, and it kind of crosses that line, and there definitely was not anything like that in Europe at the time, and even more so dedicated to the handmade guitar. So anyways, that was the spark. At the top of the Hyatt Hotel building, the bunch of us European builders. So there was me and my wife from Finland, and there was a luthier from Germany, 2 luthiers from Austria, another luthier from France, and so on. So we were this small group of people, and and that was the spark it took for Michael and Tanja Spalt from Austria to take the initiative and invite that bunch of us, these luthiers and their spouses, to Vienna to explore the possibility of founding a luthier association in Europe. And our agenda would be to launch an international guitar show in Europe, dedicated exclusively to the handmade guitar. Yeah, and then some months later, we met in Vienna. Yeah, there was these people I mentioned, and during that long weekend, we founded the European Guitar Builders Association. And this is really something, when you think of, again, that differentiation of the North American scene back in the 60s, back in the 70s, the GAL and Asia being founded in those times. And in Europe, up until that time, 2013, there was not one single association, pan-European, international association for guitar makers in Europe. So it just was totally non-existing until we made it happen in 2013, which explains why there wasn't such a show, because who would do it? I mean, okay, well, sure, it could have been done by somebody like a third party media
or publisher,
house,
or something like that.
Something like that. But often these houses are tied to their sponsors, who are not luthiers usually. I mean, they are somebody else. They're the wholesalers, the retailers, and so on. And anyway, so we founded the European Guitar Builders Association and laid the first founding stones to what was to become the Holy Grail Guitar Show.
And sort of the rest is history. When did the first show take place?
2014 in November in Berlin. And I remember this is just something that is I'll remember this show for the rest of my life, I have to say. I mean, that bunch of people that, we put our time and effort to that show made it happen from nothing. We just conjured it up from nothing, and it was such a great success. I mean, we had over 120 luthiers from over 30 countries from every corner of the planet. And I don't know, I think that show, I mean, if we would put it to, make an application to the Guinness World of Records, the most international guitar show, it would probably be this show, because I have to say, I've never been in any show like that.
So that was the first show you had that many?
Yeah. And this was the first show. We wanted to make it with a bang. That we make it for real. We show that we're no nonsense, that we're here for real, and we're going to do it different from anybody else. So we took some influence from the Montreal Guitar Show, but we kind of took it further than that. And it was a success. I remember the press, I think it was the Premier Guitar or the Guitar Player magazine, I can't remember which one it was, who wrote about the show, that the Holy Grail Guitar Show is the new golden standard of guitar shows.
That's pretty slick. That's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong. I can live with that.
And you've gone to and you've had 4 shows now. Is that right?
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
And
2014,
has it been
15, 16, and 18?
Now, are you going to be doing it annually now, or did you say you missed it? You missed it
first. Yeah, it was first annually, and then we kind of now very recently we have changed it into every second year.
Okay, so it is going to be every second year going forward
now?
Okay.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Because we already have a date for 2020 in May. So
so it is, having spent many years doing a lot of big events as part of my sort of multi-threaded career, that those years happen pretty quickly. You finish one and you've got to get started on the next one immediately. And it happens really fast. And I always joke about these episodes coming weekly. And, I, of course, when I started it a long time ago now, it seems like, I really had no understanding, real life understanding of what that pressure was going to be like and what that was going to take. I said, I can do this. But those weeks come very, very, very fast. And it is the same thing with so I've certainly seen that happen. And the same thing in the magazine business, another area that I've spent a lot of years. There's been more a tendency for, of course, so many changes in the, in the magazine business that bi-monthly, is a lot easier than monthly. A monthly magazine is treacherous. I mean, unless you've got a pretty good size staff and you're well entrenched and well funded. Yeah, that's and it's so those principles. So I totally get it. I did not know that until right now, but that's certainly makes sense. But has it grown over the years, or can you look and say it's measurably improved? It has both grown. It has both grown a little bit, but even more than that, it has kind of matured and evolved into even better than it was the first time. And even better meaning as the whole concept has grown. And this again has a lot to do with understanding the big picture, because running a show like that with a small association. Our association board consists of a small group of European professional luthiers. And the first show, we pulled it out, completely out of our own spines, with the result that we nearly killed ourselves. Yeah, with that workload. You never expect.
So somebody told me, after that first show that, you should have thought about it before that, whether you want to be a guitar maker or an event organizer, because you can't probably be both.
Well, that's a little narrow, but
But in a way, I mean, doing something of the magnitude and with the detail that we're doing the Holy Grail Guitar Show, you have to come there, in 2020 because you have to experience it. It is different. It is a show where the luthiers are the rock stars. I mean, they are treated in the way that no luthiers are treated in other shows.
Yeah. No, it sounds like a plan.
Yeah. We have a dinner gala for the luthiers, and we're treating them very well. They have cold water waiting at their tables every morning as the show begins, and they're well treated, and people love it. People love it, and it's all smiles usually. So it's a great experience for everybody involved. But anyway, back to that concept that we've been tweaking it because we understood after the first year that, okay, this can't go on because we're going to burn out one by one, within 2 or 3 years, and we'd never want to see each other after that. If we don't figure out a way to do this in a way that is more healthy for us and long-term strategy like that. So we started working on the concept, and now after 4 years, we're in a situation where we have a wonderful show team separate from the European Guitar Builders Association board, meaning that these are people who are part of the year working full time and maybe the rest of the year part time. It's like a flexible team, but it's a separate team that focuses into making the actual show happen. And the EGB board, we are there more for overlooking and making decisions and the like. So it's really working pretty well now. And I would say that our concept is, I can already see, and we can already see who are involved in it. We can see that this is something actually that we can do this. We can keep on doing this. And then there's the other element that kind of actually resulted into the decision of making the show every second year. And it is the fact that whereas in the very beginning, the purpose of the European Guitar Builders Association was the Holy Grail Guitar Show, to make it happen. But very soon after that, we realized that there is also the communal aspect to this, and that this is something that we've been missing, that we don't have this in Europe, and we want to have it. So we also do a symposium for guitar makers. It's connected to the show in the show years, and then every other year when there is no show, there is just the symposium.
Oh, okay. So you are gonna have something. They're gonna have something on the off year. That makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And this side of things, the communal aspect, as we've started calling it, the luthier tribe. Yeah. So this is the side of it that we that side has grown and matured as well as the show has. So we've come up with a lot of very interesting projects with the community. Like we had at the second show, we had a project for EGB members, European Guitar Builders members, local wood challenge project where people were challenged, the luthiers were challenged to make a guitar out of typical local wood to their own environment, to their region, and bring it to the show. And we put up like a exhibition of these local wood guitars and have a press event of that. And the point was to raise awareness of the protecting our planet and the rainforests and this, that you don't need to always use rosewood or ebony or mahogany and these type of wood that grows in the rainforests. I mean, it's also something that is just not often, it's not said out loud in a very kind of clear way that, okay, isn't this Honduran mahogany just awesome and beautiful and great sounding? And it's like, but did you know that it comes from the Amazonas? It's not kind of like, people kind of know it, but they don't say it in order to make it kind of a less dramatic, that, okay, Brazilian rosewood comes from the Amazon rainforest. And luthiers are, even though we're kind of like judged by the amounts of wood that we are using in our guitars, we are a very small part of a very big problem, but we're nevertheless a part of that problem. And often, luthiers are, that's one of the things I love about this profession, is that, luthiers are good people, and they generally have pretty good set of values, that they work from. And maybe it's that artisanal approach that also has to do with the consuming habits and things like that. But it is
well, it's a unique community. And how, at this point, how many members of the organization now?
I think there's about 150 members.
Wow, that's pretty good. And if folks want to get information on both those, I know there's a couple of websites, or is it both the same for the show and for the?
There's two websites.
What are those?
Yeah, EuropeanGuitarBuilders.com.
Okay.
That would be the EGB website, and the Holy Grail Guitar Show.com.
Yeah, easy stuff, just like it sounds.
Yeah,
it sounds.
So the European Guitar. I mean, one can become a full member or a member with voting rights in the association. Needs to be a professional luthier in Europe, because we are also handling. I mean, it's not because we would be excluding other luthiers. Other luthiers can become support members, and we encourage them to do so. But the fact of full members and the voting rights is because we're also nowadays have kind of progressed into a professional association.
Sure, that makes sense.
Some of the legal issues with the CITES and all that, and so it's kind of makes sense that those people who can vote are from Europe.
Excellent. So, Juha, I think I want to switch gears a bit, and I think I said earlier, as a designer and builder of, I don't know, hundreds of websites or platforms of one kind or another over 20 years or so, I tend to look at most sites with a pretty critical eye. But I have to tell you, your website is absolutely one of the most stunning guitar builder websites. Easy for me to say.
Thank you.
That really I've ever seen, and just by itself, it's a work of art. It really has some amazing functionality, and on top of that, you've recently launched something that's quite unique to your business, and that's called the Guitar Creator. So I know that's something you're proud of. Tell us briefly a little bit about what that is and how and why it was developed.
Thank you. First of all,
you're welcome.
Very nicely put about the website.
And truthful.
I'm very proud of it. Thank you. I'm very proud of that website, and I'm very proud of our previous websites. This is I don't remember how many generations of websites we have, but this is something that I've like I mentioned earlier, I put a lot of weight onto because from early on I could see somehow, maybe I don't know, have a good crystal ball, that I could see that internet is something that shouldn't be taken lightly, that it's something that will make a difference. And I was kind of thinking like this already in the 90s. And then coming to the Guitar Creator that you mentioned, it's something that when you think of a small business making guitars, it would usually be situation where you're offering, especially on the field of electric guitars, you're offering quite a lot of different options for your guitars. Typically, you're making custom guitars of different kinds. And then there's that problem that you can buy an available guitar or you can order something from a luthier, and you maybe seen some photos on the websites and whatnot, and maybe your friend has one or whatever, but what if you want a unique guitar made for you? How can you figure out all the details if you don't have any kind of interface to that? So you're facing this kind of dilemma that, okay, I want this guitar model, but I want it green. Have you made a green one? Can you send me a photo? And if there's not a green guitar, it becomes difficult. You can't visualize it. So I started seeing this problem early on, and this problem took a lot of time in my work, daily time, weekly time, talking with customers, trying to make them understand what I have to offer to them so that they could decide what they could want from me. So this became, the more popular I became and the more customers I had calling me or sending me email, this just became a more and more paramount issue for me, that I have to figure out something how to navigate through all this. And I had a friend who was actually at that time, this was in 2000 or 2001, I had partners in my company that are not with me anymore. Nowadays, I'm the sole owner of the company, but I had partners, and one of them had an idea about a configurator. And this was at a time when car manufacturers or other manufacturers like that did not have configurators. This was so early on in the time of internet. This was just a concept that was not really existing. And so this friend of mine had this idea of making a configurator, and it kind of really stuck with me that okay, so we're going to do something like this. And then I knew this web designer all the way back from high school, the same guy who years earlier persuaded me to make that first website that I did.
Sure. Okay.
The same guy.
Yeah.
So he came along and he told me about this brand new groundbreaking technology called Flash. that had just about started to surface on internet, and all the web designers were going crazy over it because it gave such possibilities that were just unseen in internet before. And so we started developing a configurator for us made with the Flash technology, right? And this first generation Guitar Builder, we called it Guitar Builder at the time. We launched that in 2003, and this was still at a time when still car manufacturers would not have configurators. Converse did not have a configurator. This was very unusual to have something like this. And this website, when it came out in 2003, it won awards in Europe of being, this novelty technology and commercial application of new technology, blah, blah, blah. I didn't get any money, but the web designer did. But anyways, it was great. So anyways, this tool, because from that first version of it, the first generation of the guitar configurator, it actually became a tool for us. Not a toy, but a tool. So people could spec their guitar in this very intuitive and addictive even interface, and they could send me a price request from that system. And I would get it into my email, and I could answer to them, and I would give them the price. And obviously, sometimes it was kids sending those price requests, and they had no idea what they were doing with it.
That's always a risk.
But there would always be that percentage who were serious and would eventually start buying guitars that way. And so this system became an elemental part for us, an elemental tool for us, and also for our dealers. They used it to tweak and to customize guitars for their clients. So, and it was so great because it cut off all that endless yabbing about the details.
All the back and forth. A lot of back and forth.
Like 50 emails back and forth, and still there could be some misunderstanding. Oh, I didn't mean black, I meant white. And when you do it like with the configurator, it's just so intuitive. That to me it was just kind of weird that not more guitar makers were doing it. I understand that a small builder wouldn't do it because they couldn't afford it. I know I couldn't afford it, but I was just so obsessed and stubborn about it that I still made it happen. Even if I couldn't afford it, I still made it happen.
That's a good quality. There's nothing wrong with
that. I made it happen. And at the same time, I wonder maybe it was at the time. I mean, the major manufacturers weren't struggling as they are struggling in the current years. But so maybe in those times, they would have thought, having a configurator like that, because none of them, Gibson, Fender, they didn't have anything like that. But I was thinking that, okay, I understand that they don't have it, because for them, it would kind of be a nightmare to start offering options, because instead they were more making their money out of selling black Strats or gold topless Pauls or something.
Assembly line.
Assembly line. So, all of a sudden somebody comes that now you have to make it green with these pickup rings, with that neck profile, with these frets, and except for this one, there's this little inlay, blah, blah, blah. So, and for factories, it didn't work. And for most of small builders, it didn't work because it was so costly. So for a long time, I was kind of alone with that. Had that thing, and that was something that differentiated our business concept from the rest. So it was something that really made a difference. There's that book, a really famous book, I'm sure you know that, The Blue Ocean Strategies, right? About the majority of companies competing on, as they call in the book, the Red Seas. They're having a bloody fight over prices and whatnot. And sometimes there comes somebody new along who finds herself a new ocean. a blue ocean.
Yeah.
Where there's nobody else, so you don't need to fight. So it's a blue ocean, and that's an easy place to be, because for a while you could be there all by yourself, develop your business, and become, and that could have something. I don't know what makes. I think one example that they had in that book, The Blue Ocean Strategy, they used the circus, the Cirque du Soleil, that kind of reinvented the whole business of circus by circus being traditionally these, caravans of people and animals traveling around the country with tents and with these, they were smelly and they had to struggle with the animal rights people, and they weren't paid well, and blah, 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 blah. And then somebody comes and makes Cirque du Soleil and strips the concept off of all the bad sides, let's not bring animals because they create problems. And let's not do it in tents. It's uncomfortable. Let's take it to stadiums.
Yeah.
And let's reinvent the circus and bring it to big arenas. And by the way, let's not charge $10. Let's charge $200 for a ticket.
That's right.
So what a wonderful concept. And all of a sudden, Cirque du Soleil, they had created themselves a blue ocean. And in a very small way, in a very kind of niche way, my guitar configurator and certain aspects of my kind of approach in the business did that for me. So I had that luxury of being kind of alone.
So how did that lead up to the current version? Because obviously we all know that Flash has kind of become a dinosaur.
So the current version we started developing in 2015, and we launched it in 2017. The launch happened at the NAMM in 2017 January. And we're still, obviously, this is a development that is ongoing, I don't know, forever probably, like it is with technology like this, you wake up tomorrow and it's expired and you need to redo it again, whatever, But anyways, so we started developing the Guitar Creator in 2015. And this was a time when 3D modeling and 3D animation had become somewhat accessible. Still up to this very day, you could say that 3D animated technology, it's an unbelievable business for cinema and for gaming industry. But for commercial applications, in the similar way as what Flash did, enabled for businesses to make applications based on the Flash technology, and now applications based in 3D technology on the level that we are doing with the Guitar Creator. Up to this day, 2018, it is still in it taking its first baby steps, I would say, commercially wise. Mm-hmm. On the internet, it's not something that is truly commercial applications throughout the different branches, different fields of business. It's not there yet, and it's because the technology, there is so much going on in that, the developers are coming up with new stuff all the time. But the problem is that the gadgets that people are carrying with them, whether it be phones or iPads or computers, the very, very newest ones are capable of processing the really high-end 3D animated, real-time animated data. But it's not like household. It's not something that a lot of people can't open those applications because their computers collapse in there.
So how does that figure into the current Creator version?
Now we come to this because we were, again, like we've been before, not the first time, been there, done that, and here we are again. We were really ahead of the curve in 2015 when we thought that, okay, let's do this in 3D and let's put it to internet. And so in 2017, maybe it happens in 2017. I don't know.
Got it.
So anyway, 2017 January, we come out with our Guitar Creator application. We launched it at NAMM, and believe it or not, we even had at NAMM, we had a virtual reality version of it. So you could actually put on Oculus Rift at our NAMM booth.
Sure, yeah.
and you could look at our guitar, and with the Oculus Rift, you could walk around a guitar in real one-on-one scale. You could walk around it, you could configure it, you could change colors, you could change neck shapes, you could change pickups, do all this stuff, and you could literally walk around it and see how it's going to look like, and you see it in front of you. And in 3D. And it's very difficult to kind of explain this. Those who have had virtual reality glasses on them, and you've experienced that, then you understand how groundbreaking it is, that experience. I mean, those demos they put out, when you kind of fly on top of a mountain and you look around like 360 degrees and it's not yet 100% realistic because of the pixel density, but in a couple of years it will be photorealistic, and then it's gonna be crazy. But anyway, back, I know I'm drifting back and forth, but anyway, so we were really ahead of the curve, and we rolled out this beautiful software, only to realize that even though we had made it in a software platform, in like gaming software, that we can export versions to basically any gadget. So our guitar creator could function in PlayStation or Xbox or computer or iPhone or whatnot. But we kind of realized that we had made such a fantastic application and fantastic looking application in 4K resolution that almost all the mobile devices and most of people's computers cannot handle it.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Oh, well. So back to the drafting board, and, we start developing it on and on and on. And it's still ongoing. I mean, it's still working only in computers. You can download it to your PC or to your Mac. Nowadays, it works already better because, the software platform has become more economical. It has developed. This is state-of-the-art technology all the time, so it's really developing fast. But at the same time, also more people have bought new computers, new phones and whatnot. So time is on our side on this. So basically what we're doing is that we are developing it every month, every year, so that when the household technology is ready for it, we are ready for it, and we have an app for everybody. So it's like, just a one little detail. So it kind of like explains or opens up this concept of why is it so challenging what we're doing? Because there is all kinds of configurators now. I mean, you can go to a lot of websites and they have configurators, but not really like our configurator. Because what we are doing there is this, because we're making every guitar as custom piece. And one of our differentiating features in our guitars is the Arctic birch tops that we use. This is something that we don't have a monopoly for Arctic birch, but it just happens to be that some people collect stamps. I collect wood. I collect Arctic birch. I've been doing it for 20 years. It's a type of wood that cannot be commercially hoarded in large quantities by factories or anybody else. It's something that you just need to buy plank by plank or trunk by trunk, over a long period of time. And for some strange reason, this type of birch with such figuring in it doesn't grow in North America. It grows in Scandinavia. Don't ask me why, but this is just the fact it is. And maybe it grows in Siberia, but there's no commercial activities going on there. So at the moment, at least. So it just happens to be that I've been able to build out of this Arctic birch top feature in our guitars somewhat of a exotic detail that others don't have at all in the extent that I have it, which means that we have a lot of it, and it's not a planted wood. It is a wild wood growing in the forests, and there's not two pieces that are the same. So every top is unique. So what we are doing is that we are preparing our tops, and my wife is photographing every top. And when you go to the Guitar Creator, our top inventory is there with the serial number.
That's quite unusual.
And you can put any of our actual top in our inventory to that guitar, and you can color any sunburst on that top, on that guitar that looks 99% photorealistic. So this is what I'm talking about. Yeah. And when you talk about 3D technology done in real time over the internet, streaming over the internet, and you're dealing with these layers that we have the wood layer, we have a color layer, a see-through color layer of different sunbursts and things that consists actually of 4 different layers, because you can't create it on computer environment in the same way as you do it with your spray gun. And then we have the glossy layer, and we have all these layers, and then somebody goes and turns the guitars, because you can turn the guitar around its axis in the application. So it turns and the light reflects on it in a realistic way, like a 3D animated object does. Like when you go to the, I don't know, Porsche website or whatever, you can do kind of the same there.
Sure.
But not in this kind of...
I've done that.
Yeah. So, when you imagine that in a normal situation on that Porsche website, there's a paint on that car bodywork. And you turn that car and there's that paint and then there's the reflections. And the computer is calculating the mathematics of when that car rotates. Then with our Guitar Creator, this is like a multitude of layers and it needs to be calculated. So it creates a problem. Or no, it's not a problem. Like I tell myself, there is no problems. There's only challenges. And we are one by one, we are solving these challenges. And by now it's great. I mean, the newest iPhones, actually, we've learned just the past few months that with our software platform that we've used for building this Guitar Creator on, with their updates going together with, for example, Apple updates, meaning that Apple has introduced a few months ago a whole new generation of their how the 3D animated technology works in their phones and the iPads. So the newest, the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 10, we actually have a fully functional, really super beautiful Guitar Creator already functioning in our developer version here. So all we need to do is some tweaks and to the interface and stuff. So
sounds like you're getting close to
yeah, we're getting, so it's getting there. So as I said, time is on our side, and it's only like something that I don't know if others are developing something like this. I know that Fender has now a kind of a guitar configurator on their site, and you can even order guitars from there. But this is just something, it's kind of a different ball game what they are doing. It's so much kind of, it's like the Flintstones version of a configurator if you compare it to what we have already. And so we're just, this is just something, I was talking with my friend, I don't know if you're familiar with European guitar builder luthier Ulrich Teufel.
Sure, of course. The birdfish?
Yeah.
Is that,
yes,
yeah.
That's right. He's a good friend of mine, and we've had some good laughs about this, over dinner when we talk about our work, and he works in so different way than I do. But then there's this kind of common ground of just madness, the way he's just out of this world mad scientist with his guitars. And actually the technology that he uses to make his guitars, because he's using, he's a one-man show, and he has this super state-of-the-art 5-axis CNC machine that he uses to do things that are absolutely crazy. And this machine is something that, a lot of the big factories dream of having such a machine. And from commercial point of view, it's absolutely madness that Ulrich Teufel has that machine, and that's how he wants to make his guitars. But that's not the point. The point is that's his it's his labor of love, and he wants to do it that way because it is so enjoyable for him to make that super high-tech machine bend to his will in a kind of like a unreal ways. But commercially wise, it's, any business consultant would walk in and look at the numbers and say that, wow, man, you're out of your mind.
Well, that's not, I don't see that what he does is really a traditional commercial enterprise by any stretch.
No.
But
this is, yeah.
But what you're doing certainly is and has been, for a long time. And I think this is just one more piece of the Ruokangas puzzle that's come together over a good many years. And there's a whole bunch of other things I really want to talk about and had hoped to talk about in this interview, but I'm basically out of time at this point. So I guess that what that means is we have to do a sequel. We're going to have a sequel.
Okay, sure.
And catch up on a couple of other things and maybe even more that are going on in your world. And I'll talk to you more about that at another time, but an awful lot of good stuff here. And I really, really want to thank you for taking the time to come on and share all this with us. And there's just a lot to digest there. And I'm sure our listeners are going to be extremely interested in all the stuff that you've had to say. So once again, it's been a great pleasure. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. I'm honored.
Welcome back to the back of the show. It's kind of like a post-game wrap-up without the sports. It's not that I don't like sports. There's just no sports. But we do like to talk about what just happened. You remember the interview? What did you think about it? Let us know on the official episode page on guitarbusinessradio.com or on Facebook or Twitter at Guitar Business, or email us or call us on the GBR hotline at 888-777-2404. It's as easy as that. So this was a long interview. In fact, I had much more to talk about, and we could have gone on for, another hour. And like I told Juha, we may have to do another interview, like part 2 or something, because there are some other things that he's doing that I think are very interesting and unique. In any event, his website, like I said in the interview, is outstanding and worth visiting if you haven't. And we have a link in the show notes on the episode page if you want to take advantage of that. So why was the interview so long? Well, like I said in the beginning, he has a lot to say, literally. He's a smart guy and definitely a thinker. He has a lot of opinions on a lot of things. You just have to ask, and he will expound. I was kind of amazed when I went back and listened to the final version of the interview. It's funny. His answers and discussion initially seemed to go on and on while I was doing the interview. And of course, I'm always looking at the clock. But after listening to the finished product, I actually found him thoughtful, cohesive, and truly informative. So it was a good thing. And this is somebody who cares deeply about his work, as well as the meaning of it all. And even though he seems to have a sharp focus on the minute details of his business, it does not appear to obscure the bigger picture for him. And that's a good quality in my view, and consistent with what I think is necessary to ultimately get to the destinations we may seek. And isn't it true that we can often lose focus on the more important destinations because we've been taken over by the perceived effects of smaller issues? We can easily get bogged down with a narrow path or expectation that isn't cooperating or in our best interest. Sometimes that small thing isn't fixable or usable or just isn't right. That's usually our signal to step away from the situation and rethink. And look, I realize that's a very general statement, but you should know by now that's usually where I always start. And when I'm stuck on something that's grinding things to a halt or at best slowing them way down, well, that's my cue to grab my phone and earbuds and head out the door on my almost daily walk, which, while good for the exercise value of it, when combined with good music, is often the means by which I'm able to reset my thinking and allow other options to flow in. I highly recommend it. Another great example of this thinking can be heard in the discussion of the Ruokangas guitar creator. And this is highly advanced work that they're engaged in using 3D modeling technology and whatnot. And there's been some challenges off and on. I believe that Juha has a very clear vision on this, but the technology is evolving rapidly, so the need to adapt is probably ongoing, something he acknowledges in stating that it may always be a work in process. So I guess the advice I would give to him is the same as what I leave you with every week. Stay positive. Stay focused on the destination, and definitely keep all the options open on how you're going to get there. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again on episode 35. And that's it for this episode of Guitar Business Radio. Thanks for being with us. You can stay tuned and stay in touch at guitarbusinessradio.com.